These are players that we're definitely starting this week in Week 12. We're going to start with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, for King Henry standards, really hasn't been like King Henry. Like, he's just kind of been, But again, he does still have the trait where he gets better as the season goes on, which you don't see a lot in running backs. But Derrick Henry over his last 4 games, 16 points, 19 points, 3 points, and 5 points. You're looking at that and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not actually starting Derrick Henry. But there is one run defense that we start every running back against the entire year. Which run defense is it?
The Panthers.
And the Panthers have given up the second highest points to running backs this year. They moved out of first. Who is first now is what I want to know. We should ask Kyle that.
That's a great
but they've
question.
given up the second highest points to running backs this year. And you're looking at the game logs here of the guys who have played the Panthers. Remember, Raheem Mostert, 34 points. I remember that game.
I do remember
Okay,
that
good.
game.
Kenneth Walker with 30. Tyler Algier, 24. David Montgomery, 20. Bijan, 20. Tony Pollard, 18. Jonathan Taylor, 17. Deonta Foreman, 17. Tony Jones. Tony Jones makes this list, and every week I read his name, I have the same reaction. Tony Jones. But the Titans open this week, obviously, as a favorite against the Panthers. We expect them to win, and they're probably going to do so by running the ball. And this is typically how teams have been able to easily defeat the Carolina Panthers, the very poorly coached Carolina Panthers, I might add. But with Derrick Henry, definitely comfortable starting him this week. Obviously, he's been a guy in the last couple of weeks that you wouldn't even have wanted to flex. And now I do think they play this Carolina Panthers defense, he becomes a fairly safe start, and you can put him in your flex spot. You can put him in your starting running back spot. You're not worried about him putting 3 or 4 points on the board. He's probably going to have at least 10 points this week, I would say safely. So I'm very comfortable starting Derrick Henry this week.
Yeah, we're also comfortable starting Michael Pittman Jr., coming fresh off the bye after that awesome 10-6 New England win in Week 10. Pittman without AR, has increased his receiving totals, something that we anticipated once AR went down. Obviously, unfortunate for us Colts fans that he's out for the season, but for fantasy and y'all Pittman owners, you were pretty happy because you knew what Gardner Minshew was capable of doing. He was capable of, in Philadelphia, helping A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert all produce in the same offense. We anticipated, again, Michael Pittman's production to go up, Josh Downs as well. In the 4 games with Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman had 13 points per game. And without Anthony Richardson, in 6 games with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, 17 points per game. So you're pairing that with the fact that they're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which have allowed the 3rd highest points given up to wide receivers. And you're like, ooh, yep, I'm a big fan of Michael Pittman towards the end of the season. And honestly, he's one of those guys, one of those receivers towards the end of the year as we're getting into playoff season for fantasy. He's a guy that you really want to be owning because of the strength of schedule that the Colts have for the next 5 or 6 weeks, really through the rest of the year. He's got great matchups overall. The best performances from wide receivers against the Bucs over this season so far has been Amon-Ra St. Brown with 30 points, Tank Dell 29, Noah Brown, Ayuk, J. Jeff, Gabe Davis, A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Addison Diggs, Khalil Shakir. And what's really interesting here, because this is a bit of a side note, have you noticed all the wide receivers on this list that are on the same team? You got Tank Dell and Noah Brown, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, Diggs and Gabe Davis, and Khalil Shakir.
So who else is maybe a must-start this week?
Josh Downs.
That would be Joshua Downs.
Yeah.
And Josh Downs has been really impressive as a rookie this year, but I don't think anybody expected this from him. And this is a guy, honestly, that had some pretty high draft capital grades and ended up sliding in the draft. Yeah. But he's been performing as like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 level, which, again, that's a flexible wide receiver in 12-team leagues. And you're looking at the last 2 games, 2 points and 6 points for Josh Downs. However, we are still going to be comfortable starting him because, again, looking at this data in real time, we're able to look at this and say, okay, these tandems are tearing up this defense. Yeah. And so I think I'm definitely comfortable starting both Colts receivers. I think on a normal week, you're borderline flexing Josh Downs anyways. But this week especially, I think it makes him a fairly good start.
Yeah, so that was our bonus start.
That's
there,
a
Josh
bonus.
Downs. So it's actually 9 guys that you should be starting this week. DeAndre Swift is going to be our next guy as well. And the last month, he's been okay. 17, 10, 14, then 9 against Dallas. Very, very quiet for sure.
But a high floor.
Very high floor.
Yeah.
And that's going to be mainly due to his receiving upside. I mean, he has upwards of 10 targets in a game. He did that against the Jets. He also has, a floor of 2 targets in a game. Yep. But then he's just so consistent with the load that he's getting there, which is what we anticipated going to the Eagles. He's a pretty solid talent. The Bills have allowed the 10th highest points given up to running backs this season. ETN, 36 points, puts up a clinic against this defense. Achane, who's, injured again.
What?
27 points. Javonte Williams, 21. Brees, Rashad White, Mixon, Brees Hall, Ramondre Stevenson. You could totally throw in DeAndre Swift in that list. I mean, those are a lot of talented to at least mediocre running backs. Like Rashad White is who I'm looking at there. Ramondre Stevenson, And I mean, DeAndre Swift is just more talented than a lot of guys on this list and has a better situation where defensively the Bills are going to have to be all over Jalen Hurts in that passing game, trying to keep A.J. Brown from destroying the game single-handedly. So I think you got to pick the lesser of 4 or 5 evils on the Eagles offense and take DeAndre Swift.
There's a lot of Eagles. I will say that.
Yes.
Isaiah Pacheco is going to be the next guy on this list. Isaiah Pacheco, a guy that really started the season strong, and before the bye week put up 2 weeks straight of 6.5 points. So you're looking at that, and you're not super encouraged with Isaiah Pacheco. And honestly, part of it has just been the Chiefs' offense has been fairly underwhelming.
Been very lackluster.
And I wonder who they could blame for that. I wonder if there's anybody on that staff that maybe has a history of being with fairly mediocre offenses.
Matt Nagy?
No, I wasn't thinking him, but yeah, actually, now that I think of it, it could be him.
Who are you thinking? Oh, yeah. Sorry, continue. Just keep going. Let's go. Isaiah Pacheco.
Did you figure it out?
Matt Nagy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're being sarcastic.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. They're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Vaders have given up the...
Dude, I'm saying that for the rest of my life.
6th highest points to running backs this season. So a great matchup for him. Also, it's the Chiefs. Also, he's playing Mahomes. I mean, he's a guy that I was pretty much, flexing every week if I had the chance anyways, even when he did have the down games. But guys like Deonta Foreman, 33 points. Gibbs, 30. James Cook, 20 points. Ramondre, 18. Saquon, 14. A.J. Dillon, 13. But you're looking at these guys at the bottom. P. Ryan, Latavius Murray, Mostert, Ezekiel Elliott.
Good floor because
Ahmed.
They're just getting so much volume.
There's a great floor. I mean, how many guys have scored over 10 points a game? So this is a very safe play this week. Obviously, again, you're starting him most weeks anyways, but this is a guy that before the bye week wasn't doing so hot. Definitely still comfortable starting him. And this week we think he's going to have a fairly safe matchup. So we're comfortable starting him this week in our lineups.
We're going to keep up this running back trend and go with Rashad White. And I mean, if you weren't even before this video starting Rashad White, or he was like your last flex option, start him. He's already been incredible the last month. 17, 27, 17, and 17. Great volume. Even when he only got 9 carries against San Francisco in week 11, he had 7 targets for 6 receptions. This was what we loved about Rashad White going into the season. We said, yeah, he's a really inefficient runner. And guess what? He's been inefficient this year.
Really?
What we liked about Rashad White was his receiving upside, which offered such a nice floor, and that has just really showcased itself out through this entire season so far, where I think he's going to finish as a low-end running back 1.
It sure looks least. Like. Which, to be fair, this year that doesn't say a whole lot.
What does that really say? Yeah, except, I mean, he has been fairly productive.
But he actually has been good, and the amount of touches he's been getting has been good as well.
Yep. They're playing the Indianapolis Colts, and anytime, we've said this all year, this will continue until the season is over. Any running back or any wide receiver, anyone that's playing the Indianapolis Colts is pretty much a must start. Rashad White is no exception here. The Colts have allowed the 4th highest points given up to running backs. And you pair that with like them allowing a ridiculous amount of points to wide receivers as well. That
it just means they give up a lot of points.
That means that their defense is like bad, not very good. Kyron Williams is the highest producing running back. I remember that game. 28 points. Kamara destroyed us. ETN twice. Over 20 points.
With all these games, when we say them, like when it's the Colts, we just have all like the flashbacks run through our head. You said Kyron Williams, and it was like, oh, I'm remembering all that now. I try to block it out.
The overtime game-winning touchdown.
Okay, all right, yeah, cool.
Anyways, start Rashad White, please.
I mean, starting any player against the Colts. Yeah. Garrett Wilson's going to be the next guy. Garrett Wilson, I will say, although he had 0.9 points in his last game, Garrett Wilson has been one of the most impressive storylines of the season for me. Mm-hmm. Because not only like is he in QB purgatory, he's in like, I mean, what's worse than QB purgatory? Like, I don't not like throwing to yourself. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he is
Wildcat.
The fact that he's even
Wildcat would be better than this.
The fact that he's even sniffing wide receiver 2 numbers, like mid wide receiver 2 numbers, like wide receiver 15, 16 numbers with Zach Wilson, who just got benched, by the way.
That's unbelievable.
Zach Wilson throwing him the ball. I mean, it's been incredible for him. And again, I'm not worried about the last game. Buffalo obviously played a good game against him, and the Jets looked horrible. There's a reason Zach Wilson got benched this week. But the Dolphins have given up the 9th most points to wide receiver. And when you're looking at Garrett Wilson over the course of the entire season, he has gotten a ton of targets. We highlighted this in some of our Dynasty videos, but he has 103 targets on the year. And that's good for 6th in the league. 6th.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure he's number 1 in target share, and I'm pretty sure it sits around 33%.
Yep.
So, I mean, he is just what he has been able to do. I know. What he's been able to do this year has been special. Again, maybe Boyle helps him. It certainly doesn't hurt him.
It has to help him.
I think it does too. So, for that reason, we're comfortable starting Garrett Wilson this weekend. He's been fairly good.
There are at least 40 quarterbacks in the NFL that are better than Zach Wilson. I am 100% confident in that. I'm not exaggerating, dude. Oh my gosh, I'd love to see the list of all the backup quarterbacks in the league, like on every team, and just like come up with the list of guys that I would take over Wilson. And I guarantee you it would be more than 40 total quarterbacks.
We had Josh Dobbs, 28 years old, come out of nowhere. And
I'd rather start Colt McCoy over Zach Wilson. Easy.
I mean, I don't know why they got rid of Flacco. Flacco was consistently better than Zach Wilson.
And he was horrible.
And he was...
Ramondre Stevenson is going to be our next guy here. And he's been inconsistent. That's what happens with, running backs in the New England Patriots offense with Bill Belichick, and people just refuse to believe that going into this year with Ramondre, even though we tried to tell you.
This is the simplest thing sometimes.
It's not about the talent, guys. Ramondre can be as talented as ever, and Bill Belichick is like second to Arthur Smith in just unwillingness to utilize your best player. And but this week, New York Giants, I said but that was pretty good. The Giants have allowed the 12th highest points given up to running back, so another pretty solid matchup. And Raheem Mostert, James Cook, Alvin Kamara, JT, Kendre Miller. Like, some of these guys are no names. Antonio Gibson, Kenneth Gainwell, Raheem Mostert twice. Like, this is just a situation where I don't think you can go wrong putting Ramondre into your starting lineup and hoping for some upside. There still is some promise with him towards the end of the season. Maybe, after the bye week, New England can kind of figure some things out, where I assume Mac Jones isn't going to be starting for the rest of the year. They haven't announced it, but like, they benched him last game, so I assume he's not going to play.
Right.
But whatever. Regardless, I think it's a good play to start Ramondre.
And David Njoku is going to be our last guy. We'll throw in one tight end here, because David Njoku in the last 4 games has scored in double figures in fantasy football. 17, 12, 11, and 12 points. Fairly consistent. Yeah. But when you look at the targets, 8 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets, 15 targets over the last 4 games.
Yep.
That's really, really good.
Yep.
And the Broncos, ironically enough, he now goes into a situation where the Broncos have given up the most points to tight end this season. Njoku has actually been better without Deshaun Watson. And I know that's crazy, but look at him with Deshaun Watson. 8 fantasy points per game, 38 receiving yards per game. Without Deshaun Watson, 4 games, 11.5 points. So you're talking about 3 more points, 50 yards per game, 12 more yards per game. Same amount of touchdowns, too. And also, 2 less games, same amount of targets, 35 and 34 targets. I think the Deshaun Watson injury actually makes Njoku a fairly good fantasy playoff start at tight end. I mean, and he's probably on the waivers still in a lot of leagues. But you have guys you're losing, like Mark Andrews. You've already lost Dallas Goedert. Zach Ertz, if you had Zach Ertz on your... I mean, like, so David Njoku is somebody you can go get, and this week especially, he's a really good start. It's getting close to playoff time. That's everybody for this week. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you drop a like on this video. Those 2 things help us out a ton trying to grow the channel. 5,000 subscribers before the season's up. Appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you later.